Renaissance Center is the tallest building in Detroit and the state of Michigan. This building, more recently famously known as the headquarters of General Motors, has been a signature part of Detroit, both in its skyline and symbolically. Today, though, the building has seen quite a fall from its prime, so much so that it is possible that it may be even torn down. This is the rise and fall of Detroit's Renaissance Center. Renaissance Center was constructed in downtown Detroit in the 1970s. Conceived by Henry Ford II and various members of the Detroit government, this building was constructed during a time when very little progress was occurring in the city of Detroit. In fact, by the 1960s and 70s, Detroit was losing hundreds of thousands of people due to a wide variety of factors, however most primarily due to suburbanization and changes in the auto industry. The idea behind Renaissance Center was in the name itself, Renaissance. Invest heavily into downtown at an attempt to bring people back for business and commerce in an effort to bring the city back to life. The first and largest part of the project would be a $350 million investment, equivalent to nearly $2.5 billion today. When the central and tallest tower of Renaissance Center was complete, it would tower 727 feet over the Detroit River, Lower Michigan, and Southern Ontario as a symbol of a new era in the city. It would continue to be expanded upon in the early 1980s, and in all, 7 buildings were built in this massive project. This new beginning for a struggling city, though, would be almost anything but. Renaissance Center would see only 30% occupancy in the office portion in the 1970s, and instead of being a place for new businesses to call home, it would primarily just steal ones from other buildings in the immediate vicinity. Its centerpiece hotel would be a relative success. However, that would be only one of the 7 towers. Due to a combination of the city of Detroit being in a period of decline, and the building being somewhat disjointed and cut off from downtown Detroit, Renaissance Center would simply fail to catch on well. However, in the 90s, General Motors would bring somewhat of a new renaissance to the Renaissance Center, when they would purchase the main 5 buildings for only $73 million, much less than the $350 million the complex originally cost to be built. It would be a good move for the building itself, though, as GM would invest $500 million into it, with over 5,000 employees being moved in to occupy the complex. The investments GM made into the building, including making it more accessible, renovating it, adding a winter garden, and integrating it better with the city and the riverfront, were all great improvements. And at least for a time, it seemed like the building was having a new renaissance. GM would have financial issues of its own in the late 2000s though, and it seemed like its future at Renaissance Center was in jeopardy. However, it would continue on to call Renaissance Center its headquarters, and it seemed functional enough. However, more change was on the horizon. As it would change much in the working world, COVID-19 would cause much change at Renaissance Center. Employees calling Renaissance Center a place to work would drop substantially due to first the shift to working from home, and then GM ultimately deciding to start to move employees to the suburbs. This would cause the collapse of employee supporting businesses at Renaissance in food service and retail, and ultimately, vacancy at the complex would start to skyrocket. In fact, as of this year, only 1/5 of the working population at Renaissance Center remains from before the pandemic. GM finally decided to pull the plug altogether on Renaissance Center in 2024, with plans to vacate the complex the following year. This leaves us to today. Renaissance Center, facing vast amounts of vacancy, a changing working environment, and the loss of its main tenant, is now facing discussions and the possibility of the building being torn down. But how is it that Detroit's most famous building could get to this point? Well, first off, it comes down to when this building was built. Renaissance Center was built to counteract a trend that was irreversible at the time in Detroit. Building a nice, new, shiny building was not going to stop the trend of suburbanization, be it in businesses or people. Having this building couldn't stop the job losses of the area or lower the crime rate. Having this building also would not be able to improve the blight or mass abandonment left from the effects of job losses and suburbanization either. If the building's surrounding environment wasn't going to be good, then the chances of the building being a major success were not going to be very good either. Its design also didn't do it any favors either, being somewhat cut off from downtown by the roads that surround it. and its multi-building layout making everything somewhat disjointed. After somewhat of a resurgence and much investment, it's ultimately being done in by changes in the way people work, and by the fact that it is a somewhat outdated, giant steel, glass, and concrete behemoth that just doesn't have all that much demand. All of these factors put the building's future in question, despite its great status in Detroit, and only time will tell what will happen to this great landmark. Thank you for watching.